Love yourselves. Love those children enough to say, hey, you know what? I love you, babies. I love you, honeys. I love you.
When officers arrived at the Kansas storage facility, they weren't expecting much. It was really just a welfare check. A man had reportedly been seen sleeping inside one of the units, and concerningly, he was seen with 2 young children. But when they opened the door, they found something they were not prepared for. It wasn't just the children, and it wasn't just the man. There was a container, a cooler packed with ice, and what was inside it would unravel a story that spanned hotel rooms, more missing persons cases, and a horrifying history that the man was desperately trying to keep hidden. And what was in the cooler had a name: Jessica Monteiro Rey, and what happened to her defies all humanity. By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. I bring you true crime documentaries and other things that you may later regret knowing, with at least 2 new videos every single week. Join us in the Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now. We're so close to 250,000 I can almost taste it, although I'm not sure what that would taste like, and I probably don't want to know. I want to get to know you better, so let me know your earliest memory. I think that's a great conversation starter, so drop yours down in the comments, and I'll read every single one and I'll reply as much as possible too. But now, let's go on with the video. Oh, and by the way, about 3/4 through this story, there's a massive twist, so make sure you keep watching until the end. Jessica Monteiro Rey was a California girl through and through. She grew up between Tulare, Visalia, and Palm Springs. She was the middle of 3 sisters. She was artistic, ambitious, and she was a sensitive person. In high school, she dreamed of becoming a fashion designer. She was drawn to color, texture, beauty, and she had a future mapped out that was creative, not chaotic. But then she met Justin Rey. Jessica fell, and she fell hard. The two got married in Palm Springs in 2004. No one from his side of the family came to the wedding, and as the relationship grew, Justin shared a little more about his history. He told his new wife that he used to be an escort, and he said that he was from Compton. He didn't work a regular job, and within a few years, their lives became nomadic. They moved often, they had children, and then more children, 6 in total. But somewhere along the way, things took a dark turn. There is something in this case that we don't often get to see. It's an interview with the victim prior to when they met their end. And this interview is particularly interesting to gain a glimpse into the life of Jessica, Justin, and their kids. In August of 2015, Jessica sat down in front of a camera and she calmly explained the hardest chapter of her life. "I've had 4 children illegally stolen from me," she said. "The first 2 by gunpoint, and then the other 2 the same." She said she and her husband were on a cross-country trip by bicycle when Child Protective Services began intervening. And they did it often, she claimed, without proper explanation or paperwork. At one point, she described being confronted by armed officers who demanded they hand over the children or they risk being shot. She said a CPS worker later told her, "Your baby is 100% healthy, but I'm still going to take her." Jessica believed that she and Justin were being punished for their non-traditional lifestyle. She thought that the system just didn't understand their way of living and that it wasn't interested in even trying. She spoke of trying to comply with court-ordered programs, but instead she was just shut out. She says she called every lawyer that she could, and that finally she could start seeing her children again after 3 weeks, only to find them withdrawn, confused, and, according to her, now physically harmed. Jessica said that when she reported what they saw, the visits were stopped completely. She said, "They told us we'd never see them again." Despite everything, she came across in the interview as pretty composed, as being a kind person, and still having hope. She believed her family could be restored, and she made it clear that she was not giving up. How much of what she said was factual, and her exact state of mind, however, we will likely never know. Jessica's sister Sarah had a different view on the situation. She described Justin as controlling, as paranoid, and as dangerous. She said that Justin had isolated Jessica from the rest of her family and that he had slowly taken over control of her life. And as we know from the interview, eventually the state would take their 4 oldest children. The couple then went into hiding, afraid that authorities would take the last 2 as well. And that fear ultimately may have led to what happened in this case. Jessica had called her sisters crying in April of 2017. Justin had left her on the streets with one of their kids and then run off with another woman. But soon after, she was back with him once again. Their relationship had become a cycle of control, of fear, and then reconciliation. Her family begged with her to leave. They warned her that he could end up hurting her, but she didn't listen. And by fall, Jessica was pregnant once again. She and Justin were now living in Woodspring Suites, a budget hotel in Kansas City, Missouri. They checked in on September the 25th, 2017. There were no medical appointments, there was no prenatal care, and that's because they were in hiding from the CPS. Justin believed that any contact with hospitals, or even a phone call for help, could cost them the only children that they had left. So they decided to stay completely off the radar. On October the 20th, Jessica gave birth in a hotel's bathtub. She did it alone. Justin later told police he came back from work at Ponak's Mexican restaurant to find the baby already delivered. Text messages show that she sent him "It's a girl" at 2:25 p.m. and Justin later wrote in a notebook 3:25 p.m. baby born, 8:45 p.m. R.I.P. Jessica. Jessica's time on this earth ended in that budget hotel room, a tragic picture of a life that must have been far from what she dreamed of. How exactly Jessica passed remains unclear. Justin gave multiple and conflicting stories. In one version, it was because of complications in childbirth. In another, she had ended her own time on this earth after giving birth. But regardless, there was no 911 call, no attempt to get help, and there was no evidence that she was alive past the evening of October the 20th. And yet, surveillance footage shows Justin staying in that room for days afterwards. And believe me, somehow this case gets even more gut-wrenching. According to investigators, Jessica's body was placed back on the bed, where Justin posed her with a newborn and their toddler, and highly disturbingly, he took family photographs of them for the final time. Then he disassembled her in the bathtub. He did this in the presence of his children. When some parts wouldn't fit in the cooler as he had planned, he used the hotel stove to boil them, and some of the remains were reportedly flushed down the toilet. When he finally checked out, hotel staff noted something strange. He checked out using a phone rather than going to the desk, and he tried to disguise his voice as a woman whilst calling the hotel reception. It seems he wanted to give the illusion that Jessica was still okay. Security footage showed him pulling a red cooler with a black bag on top. He was also pushing a stroller and walking beside his toddler. Inside the cooler, along with ice, what was left of Jessica. Room 323 at the Woodspring Suites was never meant to be a delivery room, and for days after Jessica's death, it became something far, far worse. When investigators searched the room, they found crimson red DNA stains throughout. They removed the drain from the bathtub, and inside the drain and its surroundings, police found apparent human tissue. Her toothbrush was also discovered, sitting in congealed bodily fluids. Justin had made no effort to report her passing or to seek medical help. Instead, he spent days inside that room with his 2 daughters, eating, sleeping, and doing what he did to Jessica. After he checked out on October the 23rd, Justin loaded everything into a vehicle, and he told no one where he was going. On October the 24th, 2017, police in Lenexa, Kansas, got a call about someone sleeping in a storage unit. When they attended the scene, inside they found Justin Rey, and his 2 children were there too. They were sitting on bags, not wearing appropriate clothing. The youngest had an eye infection, and neither child had proper formula, diapers, or any form of support. Alongside them were a red cooler and a large plastic tote. When officers asked Justin where Jessica was, he calmly replied, "She's in the cooler and one of the totes." His explanation only got stranger. He explained that he was preparing her body for transport, that he was going to Arizona, and there he would cremate her remains in a Native American ceremony. He insisted that he didn't cause her end, and that now he was only trying to protect her dignity, that all of this was spiritual. Investigators, however, were horrified. In court documents, they wrote that Justin had posted photographs with Jessica's remains alongside their children, and regarding this, he told one officer, "What was I supposed to do? I wasn't going to leave Mama behind." After his arrest, Justin Rey somehow spiraled further. He was charged with abandonment of a body and aggravated child endangerment and child misconduct in Kansas. But his behavior in court would make headlines of its own. During hearings, Justin launched ranting outbursts, screaming at authorities until a judge ordered him to be removed, being forced to watch proceedings from another room. He called the system corrupt. He claimed that he was being framed. He said that the government had already stolen his other 4 children and that they would never take his last 2. Statements which echo back to Jessica's interview from 2015. Another bizarre element in this case is that Justin Rey had a YouTube channel under the name Mr. Justin Rey CS. He documented pretty much everything. The content is an eerie window into his state of mind. Long rambling videos where he rants about government conspiracies, about court corruption and family law. He talks about Jessica, about the CPS, about their children. Sometimes it feels like he's trying to convince the world of his innocence before he'd even done anything. Other times it feels like he's just unraveling on camera. He even gives advice to other parents on how to beat the system. It's disturbing because the man speaking is the same man who just 2 months later would be caught in a storage unit with his children and the cooler. It's not just a man fighting for his family. It's a man spiraling in real time, and with every new upload, you could see how deeply distorted his version of reality was becoming. Looking back, it's less of a vlog and more of a digital manifesto, and no one stopped him. Justin's interviews with the Associated Press became increasingly unhinged. In one, he said, "I'm not a murderer. I never abandoned a corpse, never lived in a storage unit, never looked up CP." But that final claim would soon unravel, because during trial preparations, Justin Rey asked police to search his phone, believing that it held evidence that would help his case. What they found instead, though, were hundreds of disturbing searches, the type of things I can't even begin to describe here. But what they found were images not of his own offspring, but of others. And by the way, remember I mentioned that twist at the start of the video? That wasn't it. We still haven't got there, so things get even more crazy. Prosecutors then charged Justin with 3 counts following their disturbing discoveries. He took the stand at trial, but his lawyers only asked him to talk about the photos, not about Jessica's death or his children. That would protect him from cross-examination. And in court, he offered only vague denials. He said that he was asleep when the images were accessed, so it sounds like he was trying to pin these images on his wife, Jessica. He also suggested that police planted the evidence, but the jury didn't believe him. He was then convicted of these CP charges. For the 2 girls found in that storage unit with him, it's hard to say what damage was done. They had spent days in a hotel room with their mother's degrading body. Then they watched their father do what he did and load her into the cooler and the bag. The toddler was barely verbal, and the newborn was only 5 days old maximum when all of this happened. Both were immediately taken into protective custody. They were then placed in foster care while the courts determined their next steps. Meanwhile, Jessica's sister Sarah began trying to bring her nieces back home to California. In interviews, Sarah said, "He did this in front of his children. He should never be released from jail. My nieces were there. I can't even think about what that did to them." Sarah started a petition to make what Justin did a federal crime, especially in front of kids. But this wasn't the only horror that Jessica's family would face, because Justin Rey was now being investigated for something equally as dark. Their Jessica, it seems, had been in a relationship with an absolute monster, and as more came to light, he was only getting worse. There was another missing person, another man presumed no longer alive. In 2016, a year before Jessica's demise, Justin Rey had gone on vacation with a man named Sean Ty Ferel. Sean was 66 and from Palm Springs, California. He was described as friendly, generous, and well-liked. But after that trip, he vanished. There was no goodbyes and no explanations. His phone, wallet, medication, all of them were gone. His friends grew worried when the tone of his text messages suddenly changed, and they believed it no longer sounded like him. They suspected that someone else had taken over his phone. No one had seen or spoken to Sean since the 7th of May, and on May the 25th he was officially reported missing. Over the following weeks, Sean's credit cards were used for thousands of dollars in purchases, and surveillance footage showed none other than Justin Rey swiping them. There was footage at a Walgreens in Palm Springs, at a Walmart in Yucca Valley, and at a truck stop in Kingman, Arizona. In one of the clips, Rey wore a disguise later found inside Sean's car, and Sean wasn't with him in any of the footage. Then, in another twist, on August the 16th, Justin crashed a vehicle near Los Angeles. This vehicle belonged to Sean. When police searched the trunk, they found crimson red DNA. A DNA test later confirmed that it was indeed Sean's. Inside the car, officers also recovered Sean's driver's license, his credit cards, cell phone, and a Garmin GPS. 10 days later, investigators executed a search warrant on a storage unit in Kingman, Arizona, rented under Rey's name, and inside it they found Sean's wallet, his medication, some of his letters and documents, and multiple pieces of electronic equipment and ID. Sean, however, was nowhere to be found. I'm guessing that this could be the same storage unit as we mentioned earlier, so it seems like he maybe kept that as his final fallback, a den to essentially do nothing good in. Later, 2 witnesses would come forward. One said that Justin bragged about stealing from old dead guys and using their credit cards. Another recalled him casually saying, "I could have just slit his throat and taken his wallet." Justin claimed that Sean was still alive, that he dropped him off at a home in Menifee, California, but the people who lived there said they'd never heard of him. Later in an interview with the Associated Press, Justin Rey changed the story once again. This time he said that Justin had passed of natural causes, and that he then performed a ritual cremation in Arizona, the same story he would say about Jessica. But, unlike with Jessica, authorities had the DNA evidence. In November of 2016, California's Department of Justice confirmed that the DNA in Sean's trunk was a match, and so Justin was officially charged with murder in that case under California Penal Code 187. Though Sean's body has never been found, foul play is strongly suspected, and at the time of the charges, Justin was already behind bars in Kansas, because by then, everything with Jessica had already happened, and he had already been arrested. Justin Rey has never been charged with Jessica's murder. The official cause of her death remains undetermined, but the justice system hasn't ignored what happened. He was convicted on 3 felony counts surrounding the CP, 2 counts of aggravated endangerment regarding the toddler and the newborn, 2 counts of contributing to a child's misconduct, and abandonment of a body. He received nearly 9 years in prison on just 2 of those charges alone. He will now also be required to register as an SO, and more trials are pending, including the murder case in California tied to Sean Ferel. But for Jessica's family, no sentence will undo what happened. No prison term can erase the facts that her last moments were afraid and quite probably alone, nor can they undo how she was treated afterwards. Sister Sarah said he neglected to try to help her, so either way, he's responsible for her death. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.